Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers. Brought to you by the good people at CACI, the Center for American Culture and Ideas, not the pants. Ant, this has been such a depressing week, and you're going to make it worse now, but what's new and exciting in your world this week?
I'm having to give up my beloved Southwest.
Yes, you are. I sent this link to you with tremendous glee.
Yeah, when you and I traveled, I was always traveling Southwest, and I loved it. But over the years, Southwest started to have a problem with, they called it the Southwest miracle. So many people in wheelchairs getting on the plane and very few in wheelchairs getting off.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah, and of course, the thing is, without assigned seating, first people on the plane get, the choice of, the entire plane. And if you're in a wheelchair, you get priority boarding. You're on before anybody else. And so, of course, you have to tread lightly here, but it seemed to be the case that people were gaming the system.
Antony, it didn't seem to be the case. It was absolutely the case.
Southwest is going to be going in 2025 to assigned seating. It'll be interesting to see, and I've seen it repeatedly, and I kid you not, a line of 10, 12, 15 people in wheelchairs. That's all going to disappear. You'll have one or two. And of course, the problem is the people who really need to get the priority seating, they're inundated with these other people gaming the system. But in any event, I've given up Southwest because they're not convenient to me in my new life anymore. But nonetheless, I would have been apt to give them up because I enjoyed that egalitarian seating business.
And which airline is most usable in your new locale?
United, interestingly.
Oh, God, that's the worst of all of them.
Well, I haven't had any problems with them.
Give it a minute.
So far.
Give it a minute. You know about my feelings regarding American Airlines.
And yet you continue to fly them.
I would crawl over hot coals to get onto an American flight over a United flight. Someday you're going to wake up and you're just going to find yourself in Bhopal, India, wondering how that happened.
Well, speaking of India, my quick hit for the day, and that wasn't it, comes from Business Insider India. And I don't know why it comes from Business Insider India, because it's a story in the United States. What's happening is, in Minnesota, Tesla Cybertruck owners are having a problem with raccoons. The Cybertruck has that, I've never seen it in person, but I've seen the videos. It's kind of a sliding thing that comes over the bed to cover it. Near as I can tell, looks like one of those old roll-top desks. It's a roll-top thing. And of course, the Cybertruck's all silver. Anyway, raccoons have been trying to break into this, and the working hypothesis is that the raccoons are confusing the Cybertrucks for dumpsters.
Having seen a couple of these things in the wild, I'm on the side of the raccoons here. I think they are easily confused with dumpsters. These are some of the ugliest trucks I've ever seen in my life. And look, there's no shortage of ugly trucks, and they cost $150,000.
And apparently there are all sorts of problems with them. I mean, like serious problems. It was Edmunds, the car review people, had an article a couple of weeks ago where they had purchased one.
Aunt, but I didn't hit record for anything.
Well, it's on Zoom, so go ahead and hit record now.
Yeah, there you go. Hang on a second. Let me find out how to do this.
And in a twist, James is the foolishness of the week.
Yeah, that's correct. But there's a good reason for this. It's all the painkillers. Next! On Words and Numbers. Help a brother out. Just open Audacity.
Did you just start talking without doing anything?
That's right. Let's just have a big conversation, and no big deal. We don't have to worry about recording anything. Why are we here anyway?
The big mic in your face wasn't a clue that something was missing.
Didn't even occur to me that I should be looking at that's a fader of some kind.
Okay.
Where did we leave off?
Oh, with the Cybertruck. So there's a picture
that's right.
in this article of the guy's got the Cybertruck, the back lid is closed, there's raccoon paw prints all over the thing, and little bits of plastic and gouges as the raccoon has tried to eat his way into the lid.
I will know that these god-awful trucks are actually a success when I see them hauling something.
Oh, and that reminds me, I was starting to tell you about the Edmunds article. Edmunds, the car review people, purchased a Tesla. So this was not a Tesla that Tesla gave them to review.
Not a cherry-picked.
No. They went out and they bought one. And the thing ran for 1,300 miles and dropped dead. Would not move.
That's over $10,000 a mile.
Yeah, right, yeah. And of course, with these things, you've got, if it doesn't move, you can't just tow it like a regular vehicle. You've got to get one of those flatbed things because the wheels don't move.
I guess that might be right. Were I a tow truck operator, would I know what to do with this behemoth as I went to hook it up?
Right, yeah.
Probably. And look, these are the ugliest, most god-awful trucks I've ever seen. They have no discernible use. These are not made for truck-like uses.
They're not even made for vehicle-like uses, apparently.
Come to find out, that might be right. I think somebody who works at the grocery store around the corner has one, which baffles me a little bit, because how do you afford that if you work at a grocery store? But nonetheless, every time I go to said grocery store, there it is. And the funniest thing to me is that the oils from the human hands discolor the side of the truck where you open the doors.
Right, yeah.
It's apparently impossible to keep these things clean.
There's some warning about getting them wet. You're not supposed to.
Of course not. You know, somebody might have thought about these things ahead of time, but I guess we're just nitpicking. Just nitpicking.
But I don't understand. I've been watching Tesla's stock, and it's down significantly. What I don't understand is why it isn't down to zero. Because it's not just this Cybertruck. The other Teslas, owners are reporting all kinds of weird problems.
Do you remember what?
Yeah, one recurring problem is the panels don't line up correctly. In some cases, just fall off. With the regular Teslas, you've got the same problem of if the computer dies on it or the battery dies, whatever it is, it can just brick itself. It's just sitting there. It will not move. You cannot push it.
Yeah, that sounds just fantastic. I mean, just fantastic.
But they are the ultimate status symbol.
I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. There are many status symbols that would have me sit back and go, wow, you've really succeeded. This truck is not one of them.
Yeah.
Not one of them at all. I'm going to measure my words carefully here, Ant, because last time I talked about a thing, I recall it was kilt. You might recall that in the not too distant past, I let loose on kilts and all of the kilt wearers and all of kiltdom. And now I am a kilt-owning American.
I understand that someone sent you a kilt. One of our listeners.
Or the kilted economist, no doubt. Should I say his name?
Oh, absolutely.
DJ Donahue, who I found out is the kilted economist. I've put two and two together. Went through a series of intermediaries, found my address and my size, and sent me a kilt.
And have you tried it on?
I have. It fits perfectly.
Really?
Like a glove.
Now you need a claymore, one of those swords with the big hilt on it.
What makes you think I don't already have one?
Yeah, possibly. Oh, James has, now you're going to start to look like this guy. James has a portrait that I'd ordered for him some time ago.
I'm going to take a picture of it. We'll put it up in the show notes.
Yeah, one of these 17th century with all the, the flummery that people wore back then with James' head on it. What you should do, get your sword and your kilt and find yourself a nice feathered hat, and we can frame a picture of you, put beside it.
Well, that's going to have to wait a while, as people will learn in the main part of the episode. But I wanted to say, is thank you the right? Let me rephrase with better emphasis. Is thank you the phrase I want to use here?
No, let me quote James here, because when he received this thing, he thought I had sent it. I hadn't. And so out of the blue, James sends me a text, which was apparently after he received this thing. He says, no introduction, right? It's just James popping up. You, sir, are a jackass. This was jackassery of the highest order.
Are you done, or are you going to read more?
Well, it goes into personal stuff about other listeners that aren't related to the kilt. So I'll leave them out.
For now. I don't remember what I said about who, but I'm sure it was hilarious. Anyway, I now own a kilt. Guess I have to be careful about the things I mention on this podcast, Because the minute I say I hate something, it shows up at my door.
Well, if you get a Tesla, a Cybertruck, you know it's because of this episode.
I just want to go on record as saying I'm really not a big fan of the latest designs coming out of Rolex. I think they're a little much. I don't care for them. I think they should get back to the 1950s ethos that they once had and let this stuff kind of drift. So there, I don't like what's going on at Rolex. Anyway, that, of course, Ant, brings us to the foolishness of the week. This one actually comes to me, anyway, through my daughter Sophia, as so many of these weird things often do. That girl ain't right, as we often say about her around the house, and she likes to keep an eye on all the other things that ain't right. And one of those things is a lawsuit in the great state of Ohio about chicken wings.
Chicken wings?
Haven't heard this one, have you, Ant?
No.
Let me read to you the lead paragraph from a BBC article covering the Ohio court beat. Boneless chicken wings do not have to be bone-free, Ohio's top court ruled, ending a lawsuit filed by a man who fell ill after swallowing a piece of bone from his order.
Boneless chicken wings do not have to be boneless.
That's right. You can have bones in your boneless chicken wings because they're not actually chicken wings, the court reasoned. And if you're not expecting them to be chicken wings, why the hell would you expect them to be boneless?
Why would you expect them to be chicken? They could be pork.
Was a 4-3 ruling, and somebody in the dissent, one of the justices, referred to the majority opinion as, quote, utter jabberwocky. And I have to...
That sounds about
right. I have
right.
to agree. This poor bastard went, ordered some boneless wings, got a very long bone lodged in his esophagus where it became infected.
Yeah, yeah.
He ended up in the hospital getting this bone removed and getting his infection treated, and realized that his boneless wings had bones in them, and maybe somebody should have, mentioned that at some point along the way. But no. And then he says, well, this seems like just the sort of thing that the courts can sort out. And he gets it all the way to the Supreme Court of Ohio, and look at what those fools come up with.
That's astounding.
It's a boneless chicken wing, for God's sake. Why on earth doesn't a boneless chicken wing have to be boneless?
Right, yeah. And if it doesn't, why are we using the word boneless at all? It's a chicken wing.
I mean, if I order a boneless meatloaf and it comes with a big giant ham bone in it, do I not have a case?
Not in Ohio, apparently.
What the is wrong with everybody? I find myself asking that question so often that I don't even know what to make of my own life. What is wrong with everybody?
For one-stop shopping for all things James and Ant, visit our website, wordsandnumbers.org. We give a special shout out to our Patreon sponsors who help us keep the lights on. If you'd like to contribute, go to patreon.com/wordsandnumbers.
You've got that look on your face like you're about to say something real stupid.
No.
And I'm going to have to ask you. We're going to talk for a change about what's new and exciting in my world. How about that? Well, there are things this week that are somewhat new and exciting. Those of you who send hate mail in might have realized that I have been responding even more slowly than usual to the hate mail. We got a bunch this week. I don't know why. It runs in waves.
It does,
right?
yeah.
And we've been under a big wave this past week. But anyway, on Sunday, I had to drive up to Phoenix and go to a medical establishment known as the Mayo Clinic, where on Tuesday, I was brought in and blessed with spinal surgery. So yeah, on Tuesday, and we record this on Saturday. What's that, 5 days now?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They cut into my spine, but that's not really the interesting part. And I guess there are a number of interesting parts, but the most interesting part is that it was like, I don't know, Aunt, you saw the picture of the, What do you think? Should we include that in the show notes? Yeah. Was it about 5 inches? Just about that. So not a small incision by any stretch. And they ended up removing a bunch of bones from my spine from L2, L3, L4, L4, L5. So a whole bunch of bones in a big square area down at the bottom of my lower back to give me some relief from some compression that had gotten worse over time. And for those of you who have seen me in the past year or two, you know I've been having a lot of trouble walking. I've been walking with a cane. Even with a cane, it's been difficult. We got that surgically fixed, and I figured, hey, seeing as how the Mayo Clinic is just 2 hours down the road, maybe we should just go there and deal with literally the best people in the world at this sort of thing. And don't you know, they scheduled me, Ant, for outpatient surgery. I was supposed to be home, and I'm using the past tense here because it didn't quite work out this way, but I was supposed to be home within, and this includes the 2-hour ride to get home. I was supposed to be home within 6 or 7 hours of having gone in. What has the world come to? We often talk about people who complain a lot about how treatments are routinely trotted out, but cures not so much, right? They think that it's yet another conspiracy, and boy, have people been talking about stupid conspiracies lately. But they say, oh, no, they just want to keep you on drugs. It's one long conspiracy to keep big pharma in business. Well, how do you explain what just happened to me? And I have to tell you, Ant, it is astounding. I don't have another word for it. I am astonished by how this all went. And look, you know that you're not allowed to walk out of a hospital. Right? I walked out of the hospital. They walked in the day after the surgery on my spine and said, you want a wheelchair? And I said, absolutely not. And they said, all right, you're free to go. They didn't even give me directions to the exit. They just said, you're free to go. And everybody got up and left the room. They figured I was bright enough to figure it out myself at that point. Yeah. Right? And that's kind of astonishing. So within an hour of being wheeled out of surgery, I was up wandering around. Not with a physical therapist because I had to, but because I felt like it, right? Usually when they replace a knee or a hip, they've got somebody in there haranguing you to get up and walk around. They didn't send anybody to bother me. I just got up and wandered around. The nurse had to come in and take all the shit off of me, right? I was plugged into a million different things. And I said, hey, how about you take all this stuff off so I can get up and just move around? And she looked at me, she said, you sure you want to? I said, yeah. And she went, okay. And that was that. There's just nothing else to it. Yeah. And how to explain this? See, most of our listeners have never met or seen me. And I think it's always a little surprising when they do, right? People realize a couple of things. Of the two of us, I'm actually the nice one. Well, I mean, who would have thought, right? That's not how it sounds if you're just listening. But of the two of us, I'm the one much more likely to go hang out with you in a bar, right? You're the one more likely to kind of drift away and get back to your room at a reasonable hour. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But I'm also, or I have been for at least 3 years now, I would refer to myself as a cripple. Mm. You think that's fair? Yeah. About 3 years? Or do you think longer? I mean, I've got the placard for the car so I can park in that sweet spot up front and write all these sorts of things. But I've had this tremendous back pain for about 25 years. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And for those of you out there who are, in the medical field and might be interested, I have spinal stenosis. So that should tell you what I was up against. I've been in tremendous pain for 25 years. Oh, definitely the entire time we've known each other.
They were like every, right. And then you got.
That's a very nice way of putting it, actually. I think that's right. And it was very hard for me to function, to do much of anything because of the pain. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know if your math is right. I don't know if 10% is the right answer. But for the last 4 or 5 years, I have been mostly absent. Most of my intellect has been tied up in dealing with the pain.
Oh, yeah. You've been.
Yeah, not entirely. Luckily, I've been able to get just enough done that I could stay on top of things. But here we are, not even a week after the surgery, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that the nerve pain that I have been feeling for 25 years is gone. I mean, the surgery hurts. There's a surgical pain here that I'm not going to get over for a while. But as our friend Dan Asia said, look, that pain is localized and it will disappear over time, as opposed to the other pain I had, which was everything below the waist, never disappearing ever. Right. So that brutality of the pain, thankfully, is gone. I don't know what to make of that. When you're in a lot of pain for a very long time and then it disappears, your life is so radically different, you're not quite sure it's yours. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a couple of people out there who are nodding their heads in some kind of bizarre agreement saying, that man is making a lot of sense right now. Whereas a lot of other people who have never had any kind of pain like this, I don't think you could really understand. I think you can empathize, right? I think people can empathize, but you can't really know every day, all the
time. The pain able to do the...
Yeah, no, I found that for the last few years, I specialized in reacting. You just kind of react. Mm-hmm. And it's the weirdest thing because the surgery I had was on Tuesday And on Tuesday, I had no more pain. It was that fast. If they walked in and said, did it work? I would have looked at them and said, yep, completely. There's no doubt in my mind that it worked. You and I are old enough to remember when back surgery was a 50-50 proposition. You went in for back surgery and it was 50-50 whether it was going to work or not. And there was a very significant chance you came out worse than you went in. And that's, from all I've been able to gather, that is just not the case at all. They've really got a lot of this down. So hats off to the nice people at the Mayo Clinic. They did a hell of it. And it was really impressive. The thing I want to keep getting back to is the level of advance that we've all seen here. Right now, I've had 3 surgeries since 2007. 2007, I had a double hernia surgery, which, as you were talking about before, I remember a friend of my father's had it. He was laid up for 4 or 5 months. They would cut you from one end of your abdomen to the other and start peeling back layers, right, of fat and muscle and everything else. I went in for surgery that day at 9:30 in the morning, and I was sitting in my living room at noon. Yeah, there were 2 little holes. They went in with instruments. It was laparoscopic surgery. Very easy to deal with. Didn't even get painkillers for. Asked for them repeatedly, but did not get them. And that tells you something too, right? That if they'll do a surgery like that and not give you painkillers, it's just not that bad. You can tough that out. And the reason why they didn't give you painkillers was because they will constipate you. And that's the last thing you want when you've just been operated on in your abdomen. So they just said, no, sorry, you're going to have to deal with it. And I didn't even for 1 second feel the need to argue. So chuck that up to astonishing. That goes right into the astonishing category. And then this last one, I went in and they operated on my spine. I mean, let's think about that for just a second. They cut my spine open. I like to tell everybody now that I was stabbed in the back by a gang of men wearing white lab coats, which is all technically true. All technically true. But here we are, and it just didn't hurt. I mean, it hurts. The pain that I got was so minimal compared to the pain I expected to get that I don't even know what to say about it. And this will, I think, explain it. I don't think I've told you this yet. I'm taking fewer painkillers now post-surgery than I did prior. So think about that for a second. I'm taking probably 80% of the painkillers now that I took last week. I mean, life is hard when you have these sorts of things. And thankfully, there was an answer. There just wouldn't have been a bunch of years ago. The answer would have been, well, you're going to have to live with it. And I don't know how much longer I could have. Because honestly, and, you know, people need to hear this for what it is, there's really only so much pain a person can live with. And it's only going to happen for so long, right? I mean, it can't just keep getting worse and it can't go on forever. That's no way to live, and everybody would know as much. I don't think anybody in their more serious moments would say anything other than that. So, do we have a problem with medical technology? Is it not advancing? Every time I turn around, it looks like it's advancing, and it looks like I'm the beneficiary of it, which I'm really grateful for. There was a guy, I heard a story, our other khaki friend told me the story of a gentleman, 80 years old, who went in for a quadruple bypass and had it on an outpatient. 80-year-old quadruple bypass, and he's home that night?
Yeah.
You gotta be me.
Leg.
No. And look, I honestly don't know how a quadruple bypass goes. I have no idea how you would do that. But that was an operation that when one of your loved ones was told it was time for a quadruple bypass, the entire family got together to say goodbye. To just in case, say what they had to say. Because there was a very significant non-zero chance that guy wasn't coming back from that surgery. This dude was 80 years old and had dinner at his own house that night. And I dug into this a little bit today just to see what people were saying about it, you know, outpatient surgery. And of course, you've got the cranky ones that are saying, it's just a cost-saving measure, blah, blah, blah. Well, it does save costs. That's not a bad thing. But I got to tell you, man, I'm very grateful to be rehabbing at my house. But I feel better here. Take care of somebody else. And that's more important than you might think, because every time I go to a place, I talk to everybody. I want to find out how the place works. So did I talk to my surgeons? Yeah, but I talked to the janitors more, right? Because they know how everything's really working. I talked to the night nurse, the nurse who was out there from 12 to 8. These are the people you get all kinds of great information. And one thing I learned is that they are overwhelmed with surgical procedures because of COVID, because they haven't caught up on all the elective surgeries. So now the schedule's very, very tight, very, very packed. So yeah, everybody who goes home frees up countless resources for people who had a more serious time or who couldn't go. And actually, I couldn't go home. I was supposed to, but my blood sugars were very high. So high that they probably wouldn't have done the operation if they didn't know how badly I needed it. All right, I made it very clear on the way in that I would accept any risk I needed this surgery. So when a high blood sugar came in, and people know there were all kinds of problems with my endocrinologist here in Tucson. If you're in Tucson and you need an endocrinologist, stay as far away from Banner Health as you possibly. Those people are utter hacks. We'll do an episode on that later, because that woman there, she damn near killed me. But again, that's for maybe another. My bitterness will take up an entire episode for that. And I want to make sure I get her name right. Anyway, get the lawyers on the phone. We might have to talk to them. So they walked in and they said, "We're really sorry, but we think we have to keep you here for a day." As you can only imagine, I registered my unhappiness with that. And then we all thought about it for a minute and decided, well, if that's how it's got to be, that's how it's got to be. But, it was okay. I didn't enjoy it, but it was okay. And my blood sugar was down by the next morning. And we all looked at each other and said, "I'm going to go home and eat a bunch of cookies. Blood sugar's low. Get the out of here." And they said, "That's great, except for the cookie part. You may go." And I've been home ever since. And I'm here to tell you. And this happened a year and a half ago, when our listeners from that period will remember that I almost died from an infection. And I was home pretty quickly after that one, too. You heal better in a place that you love.
Right.
And I love my house. I absolutely love it. I don't love hospitals. I believe it, but just at bare minimum, somebody doesn't walk in every hour and a half to take my vitals. Right. Let me sleep, for the love of God. Right? It's just, let's shut all these machines off. If I die, I die, but at least I get a good night's sleep. It's this sort of thing. And when you sit back and take a look at the totality of it, you realize that healthcare has undergone some real major shifts, right? They're approaching things differently. And I think for the most part, it's for the best, for the most part. Yeah, I don't want that at all.
Right, yeah.
I don't want that at all. Look, you can get better treatment in a run-of-the-mill pharmacy now than you could have in 1950. Yeah. I mean, we've really made some remarkable. Oh, that's right. It's not. Look, the wife said this on the ride home. It bears repeating, I think. She looked at me and she said, "We're very privileged," right? And I'm thinking, how do you figure? It hurts. But the way she figured it was, not everybody in the world can just pick up a phone and call the Mayo Clinic, right? And to some extent, that's right. It's not right to the extent that people think. I was dazzled by what a phone call to the Mayo Clinic could accomplish. So the first thing you have to do is have the nerve to make the call. And so don't tell me it can't happen until you've tried and it can't happen. They took my case, no problem, not a lot of talk. They just said, "Yeah, send us this, this, and this." And then we got on a video call and the guy said, "James, how is it that you're walking? Because I'm looking at your MRI and I don't think you should be able to walk right now." And I said, I actually wanted to cry a little bit, because he was the first person ever to take my pain seriously. And that's really something. When somebody looks at you, and it's somebody from the Mayo Clinic saying, "Yep, you've been right the whole time. What do we do next?" And you think, hey, now, finally, we're moving forward. And then he said, "Look, you're not going to get in for a scan. That we needed more scans." And he said, "We're booked through the end of August." Now, those of you who have a calendar know that it's not August yet, because I didn't have to wait a few months. I was in for scans the next week. And it became very obvious that people were putting their fingers on the scale for me. And then when I went in to talk about surgery, they said late September. And I said, "There's no way I'm going to make it until late September." And then there was an uncomfortable silence. And I said, "You'll call me if there's a cancellation." That was on a Thursday of a holiday week. On Monday, there was a miraculous cancel. Do I believe there was a cancellation? No, I do not. I believe I was pushed in because it was serious enough to warrant that kind of behavior. And that's when you're on the receiving end of, because it's so odd, because it's not the rule, it's not the norm, it's befuddling. You look around and you say, "How did this happen?" And they're saying, "Okay, you need to be ready in 1 week for a surgery." Like, man, I was born ready. Let's do it today, please. Because that's how bad the pain was. And that could just happen like that. I think, yeah, there's a certain level of privilege that comes with that. But I am not J.P. Rockefeller. That's not the kind of privilege that we're talking anymore, and we once would have been. And I asked about this because the minute I heard that I was going to be home the same day, I became very fascinated by what was happening. I remember when the scheduler called me, she said, "Okay, so you'll be here at 11 o'clock, this kind of thing." And I said, yeah, when will I be released? She said, oh, hang on, let me look it up. And I heard the papers rustling. And she said, that evening. And I said, okay, I need you to look that up again. That can't be right. And she looked it up again, and I made her do it a third time because I couldn't fathom how that could be the case. And the more I poked at it and the more I asked everybody, every single person who walks in for this surgery, that's the plan. 40 years ago, it would have been impossible. Yeah, and you start looking at these things, and I share the sentiment, right? I want everybody to have access to everything they need. I really do. I just know the difficulties that come with that. I know that there's no magic bullet for that. And I think the people who say things like, well, everybody should have free medical care, you have to take the word free out because nothing is free. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is you think they should have medical care at no cost to them. That's a conversation I'm happy enough to have. I think in the end, if you approach it with an open mind, you'll realize that it's not possible, right? There are a number of ways that we could address healthcare, probably a number of which we have done and a number of which we have done very, very poorly over time. We could probably do considerably better, but that would take a very serious conversation about getting government out of a lot of this. And people, on the one hand, want everything to be free, and on the other hand, want government to oversee everything. Well, you should see that there's a necessary friction between those two things, probably to the degree that you can't actually have them. What they were really telling him was get his to the United States. Pay whatever it is you have to pay, because that's the only way you're living through this. And we say that a lot. I want to add something to it. If you're paying for healthcare in time, you're also paying in lives while they wait. Yep. And look, if you're paying by money, you're paying with lives too. I think we should be honest about these conversations. I don't think it's asking too much. But Ant, I got to tell you, for this week, I just want to put my feet up because I can, finally. I want to be happy because I can, finally. For the first time in years, I can feel that my eyes are all the way open. When you're in constant pain, they close. You squint all the time. And I feel like my forehead is smooth.
The first thing I thought, wide.
Oh, that's fun. The pain from the surgery is pretty profound. It hurts. But it doesn't hurt as much as the regular pain did just last week. It already has. Yeah. It already has. We're a few days out. Today's the first day that the pain ticked down a little. It's my belief, for whatever the reason, that day 3 of everything is always the worst. I don't know why that is, but I've quit smoking and had surgeries. Day 3 is the worst day. And I'm on, I guess, day 4 now, 5. And it hurts, but I feel pretty. What more could a man want after being stabbed in the back by a gang of men wearing white leopards? Right. Thank you, Antony. I will see you next week with something perhaps more economic in nature, but perhaps not, because we might have to talk about an endocrinologist. And that's all the time we've got this week on Words and Numbers. Until next time,
send us email, wordsandnumberspodcast@gmail.com.
Try to be nice to one person who doesn't deserve it. Till next week, can't take it easy.
See you next week, James.